Morning, guys. I hope you had a very good Christmas holiday, right? And only few of you guys have submitted the Christmas homework, right? As per the time scheduled. So let me see how many of you guys will be submitting at least by evening. Okay. So today we'll be continuing from the portion from where we left off. We were talking about the chapter mechanical properties of fluids, right? And we dealt with Pascal's law, right? And after Pascal's law introduction, we went for some terms, right? Talked about hydrostatic paradox, then atmospheric pressure, what it is. We talked about what is gauge pressure, then absolute pressure, etc., right? And I hope you have learned it. It's very easy also, right? So don't miss out those topics, right? So today we'll be little bit taking about from the NCERT section as well as some of the theory section as per our entrance portion, right? So I will tell you which and all is the NCERT portion section and which is entrance portion. So I recommend you, while you are writing on your notebook, to on the left side, right, on the top portion, whenever you're writing a topic, then you write this is NCERT section. Then if it is a NEET or entrance portion, write it down there itself, because at the last moment it will be very difficult to know which is NEET and which is school portion, right? Now, so continuing from the Pascal's law, right? So there's the next heading as per your NCERT, okay? It is Pascal's law of transmission of fluid pressure. Now this is something I have taught you, but not as per this topic. That is, I have while we are taking, or I will give the explanation for this particular topic, you would understand I have already taken it, right? So what is the meaning of the heading? You are going to explain how the Pascal's law is happening while transmitting the fluid pressure. There's something I have told you with example. Now, Pascal's law of transmission of fluid pressure, it states that the pressure is exerted anywhere, right, in a confined, the pressure is exerted anywhere in a confined means which is totally blocked, confined incompressible fluid, that pressure is transmitted undiminished and equally in all the direction throughout the fluid. Something I have taught, right? Just a statement, right? That is a statement of Pascal's law also. So if you are asked what is the Pascal's law of transmission of fluid pressure, it is said that the pressure which is exerted anywhere in a confined incompressible fluid is transmitted undiminished and equally in all direction throughout the fluid. That is, if you apply a pressure over here, the same pressure will be transmitted to this point also, right? That is, if we consider fluid which is restricted within a specific region in space, and if the volume of that fluid doesn't change with pressure, then the amount of pressure exerted will be same as the amount of pressure transmitted. And I explained it with an example also, remember, with 4 pistons and confined space like this, and we had 4 pistons like this, right? And I told you this is A, we move a piston downwards and all the other pistons move outwards, right? So I have taken this topic, we are just refreshing it, right? Because with this section I had to take another topic actually, which is application of Pascal's law. Someone asks you in the examination point of view itself, what is the application of Pascal's law for transmitting the fluid pressure? The first one is hydraulic lift. Hydraulic lift. I would recommend you guys to go on YouTube and just write hydraulic lift. You can see a lot of animated videos, as well as you can see the actual hydraulic lift. See, it is they are used in car service stations to lift the cars. There will be a button system here, and once the on button comes up, then the car which is placed on a platform, this platform comes up, right? So you are just pressing a small button and the whole car moves up, right? This is based on, or this is called a hydraulic lift. Now, principle of a hydraulic lift is Pascal's law, right? It's working on the basis of Pascal's law. So inside a hydraulic lift, there will be 2 platforms. One will be a smaller area and the other will be a larger area, I'm just drawing it in this way. In textbook there is a very good picture, right? So this is a system, we are just drawing a small pic. Okay, so this is the area which is, or a smaller area, and the other one is a larger area, right? Let's say this is a platform and there is another platform here which is movable. Okay, I'm darkening it. Okay, now and this tube like structure is completely filled with the fluid throughout. Okay, now there are two pistons, right? There are two pistons you can see, right? Let's name this piston as P1 and this piston is P2. Let's say this area is A1, this platform's area is A1 and this one's area is A2, right? Clear? Right, and this much is clear. If we apply a force F1 on P1, right, let's say this is F1 P1, and the pressure exerted, and the pressure is exerted throughout, right? And according to Pascal's law, the pressure gets transmitted in all direction and same pressure gets exerted on the other end, that is here, right? As a result, this P2 piston will be moving upwards, right? Clear? So what is the advantage? This is the mechanism which we have taken, right? You apply a pressure here, so or you apply a force here, so this happening in a small area, so there is a pressure exerted, same pressure exerted at this point also, due to which this piston moves up. This is the working, right? Now that is here, see the advantage is I am only applying a small pressure, I can see small force, right, on the small area, right? So we are able to pick up a big car, means we applied a small force and we got a larger force in this end, right? So now we are going to explain this entire process mathematically. So mathematically I'm going to explain this one, right? That is force at this end. We know pressure is equal to force by area, right? So force can be written as pressure into area, that is F2 will be equal to P2 into A2, right? Where F2 is the resultant force, A2 is the cross-sectional area, right? Now this P2 pressure which is happening here is the same pressure which is exerted at this point, right? So P2 I can actually say is equal to P1, right? The pressure exerted here is the same pressure exerted here. What is P1? P1 is equal to F1 by A1, right? I'm going to substitute this value here, right? So that F2 will be equal to, in place of P2 I'm going to write it as F1 by A1 into A2, right? Clear? Or I'm going to bring the area sections in one direction or in one place, so that F2 is equal to A2 by A1 into F1, right? So this F2 is a force experienced by the second section. Let me make this less sized. This is the force exerted here, right? So force F2 will be large when area is larger. This area, if it is larger, right, A2 by A1, if it is high, that means F2 will be high. F1 is small, that is something small pressure force I am applying, right? F1 is small, but if A2 by A1 is very high, then F2 can be large. So A2 by A1 large means make the A2 section, that is the area of the second platform, larger, and area of the denominator should be less, that is the area of this platform. If it is less, then if I apply a very small force at this end, it can generate a very high force at this end. Clear? This is how a hydraulic lift works. Clear? Right. Now the another example or application of Pascal's law is hydraulic brakes. Hydraulic brakes. See, it is also working on the principle of Pascal's law, right? Whenever pressure is applied of a fluid, it is uniformly transformed or transferred throughout the direction, all the direction, right? Therefore, when we apply a small force on a small piston, the pressure gets created, which is transmitted throughout the fluid to a larger piston. We have talked about it the same, right? And that is this large force. Same system. We are giving a small force in small section. You get a large force here. This large force will be applied to a brake. So you have to apply only small pressure or small force here, and it is enlarged at this end, and this high force is transmitted to a brake, right? So you need to apply a very small force and brake will be activated very easily. Clear? Took my time to draw the picture. This is how this is the only way I can explain by. If you want, you can check through YouTube and other videos also. It's not a problem to discuss. This is the most easiest picture I can draw. Okay, so this is your leg. Okay, so okay. Now what is happening is, this is your leg. You press the brake, right? So here the inside section, right? This is entirely filled with the fluid that is called brake fluid, right? This is called brake fluid, right? Now this brake fluid is incompressible nature, right? Usually it is oil. Okay, so see, this is a picture for one wheel. There will be 4 wheels, right? And each wheel will be having this system. That is, each will be having a drum system. This is called a drum, right, which is also fluid filled, right? And each drum is having its own piston system, right? This is a piston system. Okay, this it can move outwards and inwards, right? So while the wheel is rotating, this system also rotates along with it. Even if the picture doesn't look like rotation, see, this is a diagram section. Actually, if you see the picture, you would have seen in the some ads, there will be a lot of drum section while you see the advertisement of oils, right? So this is actually a pictorial representation only. Actual hydraulic brakes doesn't look like this, right? So what happens is, when you press this section with a small pressure, the entire pressure, same pressure exerted over throughout, right? The same pressure is here, so that the pressure will be pushing this drum, right? The fluid in this drum also experiences, and this piston moves outwards. So when you suddenly brake or press the brake, suddenly this piston moves. This is actually this section, this one is usually made with rubber. This is usually made of brass, right? So this will be pushed, means suddenly, right? Pushed, right? So the wheel was initially moving, so now it is restricted to move, right? There, now the wheel stops moving. So this is how basically a hydraulic brakes works, right? Many systems or many parts are there. You need not study, because that much is not there in your textbook. This is the simplest way I can explain. Clear? There are many videos you can see where a lot of details, what and all parts are there, etc is there, but 11 portions not needed. This much detail is not there even in your NCERT, and I put it from my side. Right? There are very good complicated figures also, right? So I hope you understood what are the major application you have to study in your syllabus, that is hydraulic brakes and hydraulic lift, right? Clear? Right, now we are moving to the next topic which I want to discuss is types of fluid flow, and after that we'll do some problems also related to this topic, right? Now types of fluid flow is very easy. First type of fluid flow you have to learn is steady flow. You can understand from the name itself. Steady flow means it is also called streamline flow, right? It is said to be steady if at any point, suppose this is a fluid flow, this is something I am drawing for steady flow. So if at any point, suppose this is a point, the velocity of each particle or fluid particle, if it is moving, suppose first a particle moved, right? First particle moved, I measured its velocity to be 30 meters per second, right? At the same point another particle passed. That particle is also having 30 meters per second, and third particle passed to the same point. All the particle which had been passing through this point is having same velocity. right? That type of flow where any particle was passing through a point, that flow has the same velocity, that type of flow is known as steady flow, right? That is, and the path followed by a steady flow is called streamline. Streamline, right? You would have learned for fish, right? It is able to swim swiftly if it is having streamline body. You would have learned in your lower class. So the path which is followed by a steady flow is called streamline. Okay, clear? So what do you say about steady flow? At any particular instant, the velocity of all the particles at any point is same, right? See, it doesn't mean that suppose this point is having 30 meter per, that is all the particle passing through this point is having 30 meter per second. But if I consider a point here, there suppose the particle pass, they all might be having 40 meter per second. In different points will have different velocity, can be or maybe, but same point will be having same velocity. All the particles which is passing through, let's say point P will be having velocity 30 meter per second. All the particles which are passing through Q will have 40 meter per second velocity. All the particles passing through this point R will be having 60 meter per second, right? Clear? Right, right. This is the easiest way by layman language I can say, right? So that is, let us say consider that if there is a case when all the particles of fluid which is passing through, let's say a point A, right? Say point A has the same velocity. This means that the first particle will have velocity v1, right? Second particle will be also having v1 and so on, right? Clear? And if we are considering another point B, it might be all the particles which is passing through the point B will be having velocity v2. Similarly, if I consider point C, the velocity of all the particles passing through the C point will be having v3 velocity, right? Clear? That is, velocity is changing from one point to another, but one particular point is having same velocity, right? Similarly, another important point while you discuss a steady flow is no streamlines can intersect. That is, if two streamlines, suppose these two streamlines, right, they can never intersect. This is called one streamline, this is another streamline, and this is another streamline. Streamlines cannot intersect with each other, right? If two streamlines intersect, suppose they intersect, right? Suppose this is a diagram for two streamlines, they have intersected, I am drawing. That means the velocity at this point can be in this direction or can be in this direction, right? That is, if I consider this point, this is having two velocities, one is here and the other is in this direction. But we just discussed that the definition of streamline flow is at one point there can be only one velocity. That's why we say streamline flow, the streamline flow or steady flow, the streamlines cannot intersect. Clear? Right. Now, similarly, the next flow, similarly we have to talk about Reynolds number also, but I will first discuss all the flows, then we'll go for the Reynolds flow. Right. Right. So first we'll talk about turbulent flow, then we'll go for equation of continuity. That's better. Okay. So next is, because in your textbook every topics has been jumbled, so we'll go for an order, right? Since we have talked about what we have talked about steady flow, the next flow which we can discuss is turbulent flow, right? So what do you mean by flow, turbulent flow? You can understand from the name itself. A fluid flow is said to be turbulent if the velocity of particles vary at any point erratically. Erratically means it changes as it wants, right? Right. That is, the fluid particles are moving here and there. There is no moving in organizing matter. They have different velocities. If I consider like this, they are moving like this, right? So each particle will be moving different velocity. Each point will be having, suppose I consider only one point section, right? This point section. Here the another particle might be moving like this, right? So each point, if I consider this point itself, there are many particles moving at the same time with different velocities, right? Here and there moving, or I can say highly disturbed flow is called turbulent flow. Clear? Right? Very easy. And you would have heard about eddies, right? I'm talking about in Malayalam because it is better to understand. Churi, right? That is eddies, right? That is when you see a waterfall, right? When suddenly they fall, so there will be a lot of like movement like this, right? So this is eddies, right? So it is a very good example of turbulent section. Clear? Right. So before moving on to the equation of continuity, now which I am going to take is purely need section. Right. So till now which you have taken is purely what? And not purely, it is both NCERT as well as need section. Now what I am going to take now is purely entrance portion. That is buoyancy and Archimedes principle, not there in your textbook. Right. So buoyancy and Archimedes principle. So what do you mean by buoyant force? Right. Buoyant force is an upward force which is exerted by a liquid on a body immersed in it. Suppose this is a liquid section. I have a body here. So the liquid will be exerting an upward force on that body, that is known as buoyant force. Right. Yeah. Suppose I am going to consider a cube. Right. Let's say that cube is having cross-sectional area A, and I am going to dip this cube inside a liquid which is having density rho. Right. So the liquid exerts a pressure on the body from all the sides. Right. Now the forces which is acting on the sides will cancel each other. Right. But the forces which is acting on the top, right, face at the height, let's say this at a height h1. Right. This is a liquid section. Right. So the forces which are acting at the top and the bottom, right, does not cancel. Right. Clear? This is very easy to understand with an example, with an equation, etc. You can want, if you want, you can use. Right. So the upward and the downward force will not be cancelling out. Right. Right. So the resultant, suppose you asked what is a buoyant force, that is force on the lower section minus force exerted at the upper section. Right. So force is equal to what? I have talked about it, force in terms of pressure. If you want, I can write it as lower portion force is equal to pressure at the lower section into area minus pressure at the upper section into area. Can't I write it? Yes. Now it's a cube, so area is common. So pressure at lower section with respect to height h2 rho ga. Pressure at the upper section h1 rho ga. Right. See, if you require the diagram, I can even draw it like this. This is a liquid section with density rho. I'm going to consider this cube. Let's say the top surface is a height h1 from the surface. Top below section is at a height h2. So now you can relate the equation, right? h2 rho g a minus h1 rho g a. Right. So I can just write the common terms outside, so that it becomes h2 minus h1 into rho ga. Right. Now we know h2 minus h1, that is the height actually of the cube, right? If someone asks you what is the height of the cube, that is h2 minus h1, that is the height of the cube, right? So actually h2 minus h1 into area is the volume of the group, right? So force or the buoyant force is equal to this. I can write v rho g, because h2 minus h1 into a is volume, right? And we know what is volume into density is mass, right? So it is mass into g. So that is what is mass into g, that is your weight, right? So weight of the liquid displaced, not of the block, usually that is same, right? So see, so what is the buoyant force, right? So buoyant force is equal to the weight of the liquid which is displaced by this cube. When you put this cube inside the liquid, it displaced the equal volume section of water, right? That water or that liquid, that liquid displaced weight is W, right? Clear? So the buoyant force is numerically equal to the weight of the liquid displaced. Clear? Right. Now, Archimedes principle, what did it say? When a body is immersed partially or completely in liquid, it experiences a loss in weight which is numerically equal to the weight of liquid displaced. Right? That is, if you are dipping, this is a liquid, you are dipping the object fully or partially. Right? So, this object will be experiencing a loss in weight. Right? Which is equal to the weight of the liquid it displaced, right? And that weight of the liquid displaced is equal to the upthrust it is the object, or upthrust of the liquid on the body. Upthrust is buoyant force, right? A buoyant force in another name is upthrust by the liquid, right? Clear? If W is the, suppose W I am writing is the weight of the body, right? And if the body is having density rho, then let us say I'm dipping this. I'm taking another example, okay? Right? Let us take it as another case, right? I'm having an object which is having weight W, it is having density rho, and immersing in a liquid which is having density, say, no, let us change the density term, let us change the density is D. Then W, the weight of the, or the observed weight of the body. Let's say W is not actually weight. I'm sorry, because I'm confused, because I want to relate a term, because I want to make an equation for you guys. Let's say W is the weight of the object which you are going to observe when it is dipped in a liquid. That is better, right? Let us say I have a liquid, it is having density D. I'm going to dip inside this liquid a cube, let's say like this, right? And this cube's weight whatsoever, right? So I'm going to dip this object inside this liquid, right? Now after dipping, this weight, or this object's weight, is not its actual weight, it is changing, right? Weight reduces, right? So let's say that observed weight of that body is W, right? And rho is the density of this object. Clear? Right? Clear? Now W, that is the observed weight of that object, is equal to its true weight, which was the weight when it was in air, minus weight of the liquid displaced by that object. Weight of the liquid displaced. Right? This is something common sense here. Right? When you yourself think you are dipping yourself into water, you feel less weight than your actual weight. So actual weight is greater. So weight you feel is equal to true weight, that is actual weight minus weight of the liquid displaced. Right? So true weight is what? A. Right? Weight means your mg, that is force, right? Force is equal to pressure into area, right? Area into pressure is your, this object's height h rho into g, minus weight of the liquid displaced, it is a h dg, right? The same height will be displaced, that much amount of height water will be displaced, right? Clear? So I can write it as ahg is common, right? Is ahg rho minus d, right? What I am going to do is I am going to take rho as common, right? So this becomes 1 minus d by rho, right? And we have just written, right, this much is clear, right? So this is your W, that is apparent weight, or the weight you feel, right? W, so someone asks you what is the true weight, so AH rho G, that is your actual weight, right? So this is your true weight. You are just in air, you are having density, the height is h, right? So you will be exerting a force downward, that is your weight, right? So that is a force, right? Clear? If you are having a doubt, I will write here also. Weight is mg. Mg is equal to volume into density into g, right? And volume I can write it as area into height into g, right? So this is the weight you experience. So that is a true weight, right? Into 1 minus t by rho. Someone asks you true weight, that is equal to apparent weight, that is weight you are experiencing in water divided by 1 minus density of the liquid in which you are dipping yourself divided by rho. Clear? Right? So this is an equation which you can use while solving problems. Which one? Need problems, not in your NCERT section. Clear? Next topic is flotation. Again guys, this and all are need section, not NCERT. Right? So a body can only float in what condition? In equilibrium. Right? I don't think I have to say what is floating, etc. Right? So body will say to be at floating section when it is in equilibrium. Right? That is, if the resultant force and the resultant torque, if it is equal to 0, that is force and torque which is acting on that body, if it is 0, then I would say that object is in equilibrium. Right? Then I can say what are the conditions for floating then. That is, when the weight of the body must be equal to the weight of the fluid which it is displacing, right? Then, so when I say it is floating, first condition, minimum condition I'm saying, that is, if this is an object, I am dipping it in a liquid, means if the weight of the object is equal to the weight of the liquid it is displacing, then that is the first condition for equilibrium condition, or I can say floating. Second is, body's weight and upthrust due to the fluid displaced should act along the same line, right? The weight, right, as well as the upthrust. Suppose this is a weight line downwards, the upthrust also should be in the same line. Then also I will say these are the two major conditions for saying that an object is in equilibrium in the fluid, or I can say it is said to be floating. Right? Clear? See, suppose I'm going to take some explanation I'm going to take now. Let's say W is the weight of the body, right? And WB is the upthrust, or I can say due to buoyancy, the liquid is providing an upthrust. That weight I'm going to say WB. Now, let us say case 1. Let's say weight of the object is greater than the buoyant force or the upthrust which is given by the water or the liquid. The weight of the body is greater than the upthrust. Then the net weight, that is W minus WB, that is the true weight, right, minus the weight provided by the liquid displaced, that is a buoyant force, right, that is your apparent weight, right? So and the weight of the object is greater than the, see, this is simple, you can understand by the figure itself, that is a weight downwards is greater than a upward thrust, means the object will be moving downwards, right? It accelerates downwards. Clear? Right? Now let us say about case 2. Case 2, when weight of the object and buoyant force both are equal. Right, that is the weight of the body is equal to the upthrust. In this case, there is no net force acting upwards nor in the downwards. So the body just floats below the surface of fluid. Thus, if this is a fluid, then the body will be just floating. Right? Now let us talk about the case 3. Right? When the weight of the object, actual weight, true weight of the object is less than the buoyant force, right? Or the upthrust. Then the body is, suppose this is the liquid section, then the body will be held, this is, the fluid section, body will be held under the fluid surface is released, it moves up, right? It is partially like this, the body will be partially immersed, so that the upthrust is now balanced by the weight of the body, that the weight of the fluid displaced is equal to the weight of the body. That is, see, here what happens is the buoyant force is greater, right? So more protrusion in the down upward direction, right? Clear? So now the buoyant force is actually balanced when half of the thing or half of the object is outside, not half, depending upon. Clear? So in this condition, when the buoyant or the weight is less when compared to the buoyant force, that is the upthrust, then it moves up, the object will move up and floats partially immersed, such that the upthrust is balanced by the weight of the body. Until and unless the upthrust and the weight is balanced, till that time this upthrust will push the object upwards, and at some position the weight of the body and the upthrust balance. Till then the object will till that position the object will be pushed upside the or upward towards above the surface of the liquid. Clear? Right. So in this condition I can say, once this much portion, right, let's say this much portion is now above the liquid, now I can say the weight as well as weight of the object has balanced the weight of the liquid displaced. So weight of the object is mg, or I can write v rho g is equal to v dash, that is the volume, total volume of the submerged volume of the body, right? Suppose if you don't understand, I am writing its equation again. Now see what happened is, now a part of the object is upward the liquid surface, right? Now I can say that the weight of the body is balanced by the weight of the fluid displaced, right? Or I can say the weight of the fluid displaced is equal to the weight of the body, right? So let's say V, right, is the total volume of the object, right? And V dash, let's say, is the submerged volume, right? This much volume, right? Submerged volume, right? Clear? And let's say rho is the density of the body, and let's say rho dash is the density of fluid. Then when this condition happens, I can say that now the weight, okay, is balanced at the above section and below section. Is V into rho g, that is the weight of the of the body, right, is equal to the fluid displaced, that is weight of the fluid displaced, that is volume. This much is the only water displaced, right? See, this much portion of the object is only immersed in water, so this much section of volume of water is only displaced, and that volume is V dash into density of the liquid is rho dash and into G. Right, now G can cancel out, so I can actually write V dash by V is equal to rho by rho dash. This is the condition when the upthrust is greater than the weight of body. Clear? Right? This is section little bit twisted, and most of the problems are asked from this case. Right? That's why I took it again and again. Clear? Right? See, now here also I can say a condition. What happens when rho is less than rho dash, that is the density of the object is less than density of the liquid, right? That is when this fraction is less than 1, right? When rho is less than rho dash, right? So that is the body floats partially immersed in the fluid only when the density of that object is lower than the fluid. That's why the ice is floating on the water, right? That is when the salt's density is lesser than the density of the fluid, then only the object or the body will be partially floating. Right? This is actually based on the law of flotation. That is, the weight of the body is equal to the weight of the body, it's the weight of the fluid displaced, and center of gravity of the body and the center of gravity of the displaced fluid should be lying on the same vertical line. Again, I'm repeating, this is not a CRT section. If you didn't understand, I just state the law of flotation. That is, if I consider this as a fluid section, and okay, I immersed an object here, so the object will be having a center of gravity, right? And this body has displaced actually this much area or this much volume of liquid, so that liquid will be also, right, which is not there now, will be also having a center of gravity, right? Or I can say it is actually called center of buoyancy actually. So that liquid center of buoyancy and this body's center of gravity should lie in the same line, right? Then only I will say that object is actually properly floating, right? The center of gravity of the body and the center of buoyancy falls on the vertical line, then only I can say the body is said to be floating. Right, that is, if now the body is displaced, right? Displaced means I am pushing from one side, then I would say the line of action of the weight of the body and the line of action of the buoyancy are not collinear, right? See, like this, I'm drawing a figure again, right? This is the figure. I am pushing that object, means now this object will be like this, right? So the center of gravity of the object is here, but its center of buoyancy might be here, because the liquid displacement buoyancy will be here. So the line has changed, right? This was the actual line occupation, right? So I would say now a torque has been happening. So I will say now it is not properly floating, right? Clear? Right? So I'm just making you understand some of the terms that are more further, that is meta, center, etc., that is not required. Throughout your NEET section also, that is not required. This much is clear, right? So what and all are condition of floating, partial floating, etc. I hope it is clear. Right, now let us move on to the next section which I want to take. This is based again is on your syllabus. Okay, this is a NCERT topic, that is equation of continuity. Equation of continuity. Again repeating, this is a NCERT topic as well as in NEET section. You will be asked for deriving equation of continuity, and actually equation of continuity, there is another term for equation of continuity, that is called conservation of mass of incompressible fluid. Conservation is NOK, conservation of mass of incompressible fluid. I don't know why N is not coming. Incompressible fluids. This is another term for equation of continuity, right? See, what does the equation of continuity say? According to equation of continuity, AV is equal to constant. A into V is equal to constant. A is a cross-sectional area and V is the velocity with which the fluid is flowing. That is, if any fluid is flowing in a streamline flow, that is, if there is a pipe, right, and is having a uniform cross-sectional area A, and any any liquid is flowing in a streamline flow, right, then the rate of flow of the liquid across the cross-section area remains constant. The rate of flow of the liquid across any cross-section will become or is constant. That is the actual statement of equation of continuity. I am repeating the statement. It means that is, if any liquid is flowing in a streamline flow in a pipe of non-uniform cross-sectional area, right? Non-uniform means, guys, the pipe can be like this. It's a non-uniform cross-sectional area, right? Right. So if any liquid is flowing in a streamline flow in a pipe of non-cross-sectional area, then the rate of flow of liquid across any cross-sectional area remains constant. Now we are going to prove that. Alright. Main point is you have to mention streamline flow. This is not true for turbulent flow. It is only true for streamline flow. Right? Clear? Okay. So actual statement is there in your textbook. Okay. So we are going to prove this one. Suppose consider a fluid which is flowing through a tube of varying thickness. I am going to draw the same section. This is of varying thickness. Alright. Right. Let's say this area section is A2 and this section is area A1. Right. One end is having A1 and the other end is having A2. Now let's say at this end, velocity and density, this velocity of liquid which is flowing or liquid or fluid is V1 and the density of that fluid is ρ1, and velocity and density of fluid on the other end I am going to write as ρ2 and ρ2. Right? See, I will tell you ρ1 and ρ2 will be same, but let us move on. I will tell you when to cancel. Right? Now here at this end, right, for let's say for a small interval delta t, right, area of cross section is this much, right? So how much area A1, and during delta t interval, right, suppose you are asked what is the volume covered by the fluid, right? Suppose the fluid has entered now next delta t interval, let's say it has traveled from this point to delta. So during delta t interval, it has moved this much section, means this much volume will be covered by it. So what will be the volume covered by during that interval delta t? It will be area into length, right? This is the area section into length, right? How can I say length here? That is, length will be velocity into time. So that is area A1, velocity V1, and time is delta t. That is the volume of water entering, right? And it has passed this much section, right? Volume covered by the fluid in a small interval delta time t, right, across the cross-sectional area A1, this much. Now similarly, once the water passes, it has to come from this side also, right? So same time interval delta t, right? Volume covered by the fluid in same delta t time interval across this area. A2 will be how much? Will be A2 V2 delta t, right? Now we know that, let us say we are going to consider that the fluid is incompressible, that the volume of the fluid does not change according to the pressure. That is, similarly, same liquid means the densities are same, right? So in the first section here, the mass, what can I write regarding the mass? Mass is equal to volume into density. I have found the volume here, right? So mass is equal to rho1 A1 V1 delta T, right? And the mass which is leaving, this is mass entering, and this is mass of water, which is water or liquid which is leaving, will be rho2 A2 V2 delta T, right? Now we know that mass, amount of water which has entered, should be equal to amount of water which is leaving. That is a proper way, right? In the pipe, how much water is coming in, that should be leaving, right? So these two sections are equal, means I can cancel these two guys, and density is same, right? So I can write A1 V1 is equal to A2 E2, right? That is, we can write AV is equal to constant. Now this is what has been told in the statement, the initial section is also, that is a product of, right, cross-sectional area of the tube and the velocity of flow has the same value at every point of the tube, right? When you consider this tube, at every point of the tube, area of that section into velocity of the fluid at that section is always constant. Clear, right? Right, this is the derivation part, guys. Mug up. This is something which you have to learn. Right, now some terms I am going to introduce with respect to this one. That is, we are going to conclude this section. Right, that is volume flux. Right, or it is actually flow rate. That remains constant. This A into V which you have called is called volume flux or flow rate. That remains constant throughout the pipe, right? Do a small question, guys. Right, suppose the atmospheric pressure is given as equal to 760 millimeter of mercury column. Density of the mercury is given as 13.6 into 10 to power 3 kilogram per meter cube. Now assuming, let's say, the density of air is given to be 1.3 kilogram per meter cube, what is the height of the Earth's atmosphere? You're given this is atmospheric pressure, you're given the density of mercury is given as measured in the mercury barometer, and you are given the atmosphere's or air's pressure or density is given this much. Then what is the height of the atmosphere? It's very easy. See, that means you are balancing the pressure section. That is, let's say H is the height of the Earth's atmosphere, then its density is 1.3, right? H rho g, that is a weight, right? Or I can say that is the pressure which is exerted by the atmosphere. H, that is the height of the atmosphere, H rho into g, right, should be equal to, see, the same pressure which is H rho g, which is exerted by the atmosphere, is something which is measured by the mercury column. So mercury column's height is 760, right? So 760 I am going to convert into centimeter, or that is Let's say I'm going to convert it into meter, that is better now. So it is 0.76, right, into, I'm going to multiply this density, that is h rho g. See, the same. I hope you understood what I'm doing. What is happening is pressure which is exerted by a length, that is h rho g, common. Now that same pressure is measured by this much length of mercury. So I'm writing h rho g for that also. 0.76, that is h of mercury, into 13.6 into kilogram, right, 10 to power 3, I have converted into gram, into g. Right, Gg cancels, then you can find h. You will find h as around 7.95 kilometer. Not the exact value, right? We are finding a closest value. Clear? Now, next section, I'm going to do another problem. See, you are having a hydraulic system, right? So, you're having two cylindrical vessels like this. This is a larger vessel, and this is a smaller vessel like this, right? And it is completely filled with fluid. There is a piston here, and there is a piston here also, right? Clear? Clear. Let's say here this one's area is 100 centimeters squared and this one's area is 3 centimeters squared, right? Clear. And a body of mass 6 kilogram is placed over here, right? That is, a mass is equal to 6 kilogram is placed at the smaller piston. Now you are asked how much force can be applied, right, on the cotton section which is placed on this section. You are asked, suppose a cotton piece is kept over here, how much will be the force experienced by this one, right? So you know the pressure will be equal in this section, right? This problem is based on which law? Pascal's law, right? So how would you do this one? So pressure at both the two pistons will be equal, right? So pressure is force per unit area, right? What is the force exerted here? At this end will be its weight, that is 6 into g force. And what is the area there? It is 3 centimeters square, or I can convert it into meter. It will be 3 into 10 to power minus 4. That is equal to, what is the force exerted at this end? I don't know. That is force by per unit area is 100 into 10 to power minus 4, right? You will find F is equal to 2000 Newton. Very simple, right? Now let us do another question, right? Let's say there is a YouTube manometer, only a YouTube is there, not manometer section is not connected, right? A YouTube is consisting of an oil as well as water. It's a mixture, right? And both of them are having, let's say, a relative density of 0.8, right? It contains water and oil of relative density 0.8. If water column is 5 centimeter tall, what is the height of the oil column? That is, if I draw it like this throughout is oil and you are having water here, right? This is water which I have darkened, that is water, right? So you are asked, suppose this is at a height, let's say like this, above height, right? Clear? So you are asked what is the if water column is 5 centimeter tall, right? You are asked what is the height of the oil column, right? And how would you solve this one? Again, this is based on Pascal's law. Now pressure section is different here, but see, pressure at the bottom will be equal, right? This is oil. If you want, I can write it as oil. This is water, H2O, right? Now the pressure at the bottom is equal means, if I would say this, I'm going to take a position, I'm going to take this position, right? And this position as per the oil is at a height h1 from the surface, and let's say water is at a height h2 from the surface, right? And this point and this point equal position, so they are having same pressure. Pressure, you cannot talk about this above position, right? Because pressure at same height will be same, right? So this point is at distance h1 from the surface, so I will write h1, and that is oil, right? That is oil's density. It is related to water, then it's okay, because water's density is 1, right? So I will write 0.8, that is the density of the oil, into G. Now this point, it is a distance h2 from the surface. So with respect to water, I will write 5 is the column's height of water, that is given h2 is 5 meter, I think, right, into density is given as, or you know, was 1 into g, right. So you can find this h1, that is the height of the oil from the surface, is to be 6.25 centimeter. Clear? Not that tough. Okay. Right, now let us do another simple question. Let me check. Right, okay. Now let us say a body of mass, let's say 4 kilogram, right, is completely immersed in a liquid. Let's say the density of that liquid is 0.8 kilogram per meter cube, right. Its weight in the liquid, that is apparent weight, that this body which is 4 kilogram, right, mass, right, its weight inside the liquid is found to be 16 newton. That is its apparent weight. You're asked what is the volume of the body, actual volume of the body. I'm repeating, there is an object which is having mass 4 kilogram. It is dipped in a liquid of density 0.8, and when it is dipped in water, sorry, in that liquid, it is weighing only 16 newton, right. So you are asked what is the volume. Right, clear. So first we have to find what is the true weight of the body in air. Let's say that is W1. True weight is mg, that is 4 into g, or I will write it as 40 newton, right. So in air its weight is 40 newton. Weight in the water is, or the liquid, right, is only 16 newton. Right, clear. That means loss of weight is actually is upthrust, right. This is the liquid, inside that the object is completely immersed, right. So this is the object, so it is now showing only 16 newton, means there is an upthrust from the below, right. That will be 40 minus 16, that is 24 newton. That is upthrust or buoyant force is how much? 24 newton, right. Now we know the upthrust is actually the weight of the water which is displaced, right. So WB is equal to weight of liquid displaced, because that upthrust is given by the weight of the liquid which is displaced, right. So what is the weight of the liquid displaced? That is actually equal to volume of the body, because the body is the what is displacing it, right. Volume of body into density of the liquid into g, that is V rho g, right. So volume, I will write it as what is the volume of the body, right. This is WB, so volume of body will be V WB divided by rho g. Now what is WB? You have found it as 24, divided by rho is how much? It is 0.8 into 10 to power 3 into g, that is 10. You will find it as 3 into 10 to power minus 3 meter cube. Clear? Right? And I hope this much is clear. So see guys, this is an this much section is little bit difficult. I also know little bit difficult in the sense understanding section is difficult, right. So if you have any doubt regarding this much section, that is floating etc., you guys can talk with me, or you guys can ask me through WhatsApp, or I would recommend Wednesday, the next day, right, we are having live class. You guys can ask me, because this section you will be asked lot of questions, right. And after that the next video section will be purely derivation based, lot of the, and again it will be purely most of them, around 90% section will be NCERT section reserve, right. A lot of section is to be covered, that is Bernoulli's principle, Torsel's law, Venturi meter, dynamic lattice, etc., purely theory section. So major problems in NEET is coming, or usually is asked from this section which you are taught today, that is floating etc. How much is the weight above the liquid surface, how much is the volume which is below the surface, is something which is asked again and again. Clear? I hope this much is equal, right. And there is another section. If you okay, I want to introduce a small section also, but okay, that is regarding our turbulent etc flow, there is a number which you can talk about, which is a Reynolds number. Reynolds number. It is a dimensional number whose value gives us an idea whether the flow is turbulent or streamline flow. There is another name called laminar flow, right? Streamline flow, or I can say steady flow is also called laminar flow, right? Suppose if you consider Reynolds number, there is an equation also, that is R is equal to rho Vd by eta. Eta is called viscosity, which we will learn later on, right? Just write it down now. Viscosity etc. I will discuss later on. Rho is the density of the liquid, V is the velocity of the fluid, and D is the diameter of the pipe through which the fluid is flowing, right? Clear? So this is the Reynolds number, right? So how can I say or distinguish whether it is a turbulent or laminar flow? If Re, that is a Reynolds number, it is reaching 1000, right? If Reynolds number is 1000, it is a laminar or a steady flow, right? If it is greater than 2000, it is a turbulent flow, right? And if it is between 1000 and 2000, it is an unstable flow, that is, it is an intermediate stage. Clear? Right? So write it down now. Again, then this viscosity I will teach you in the next video, right?